الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So inshallah, continue from the first part, which this book is in two parts. The first part is about beliefs, and the second part is about fiqh. We're on page number 36. 36 inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He says matters of faith. So far he spoke about the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the prophets, about the books, and then Sahaba-i-Kiram, the ranks of the Sahaba-i-Kiram, the ranks of the awliya of Allah, and so on, and the companions. But now he's bringing on to another topic. It requires a lot of discussion. It requires there's a lot of debate about this topic as well. So inshallah, we're just going to keep it brief and simple, as long as you know the main understanding of this. Obviously, different communities, different experiences, they bring different outcomes as well. So inshallah, we'll just keep it brief for this part. It says, we deem communal unity to be a binding right, founded by submission to the head of state and obedience to him, because we consider dissent and opposition to him to be disobedience. So here is talking about that when you have a community and a leader in the community, like for example, most of us are Pakistanis, I'll use a Pakistani example, right? So we have currently, I don't know the political parties, but they say Nawaz Sharif, right? We have them in charge of the Pakistan system now, the politics or the government, you could say. And then you have people who follow Imran Khan. They say Nawaz Sharif is so and so and his party is so and so. On the other hand, they say Imran Khan and his party is so and so. What should be the stance of a normal person? So, for example, one is in charge now, right? Because of the corruption, should the people, run riots in the street and opposing them, cause, bloodshed? Because what is, when the people stand up and an uprising happens, it leads to what? It leads to bloodshed, and that's normally what happens. Like we know what happened in Syria. We have ulama like Sheikh Ramadan Bhuti rahimahullah ta'ala, who were against the uprising. Then we had other ulama who were for that, because the leaders were doing dhulm and oppressing the people. The leaders were, torturing the people, not giving them the rights. So then some ulama went with the stance that we should stand our ground against the government. Some said, no, don't stand your ground because it's going to cause bloodshed. Hence, ulama like Sheikh Ramadan Bhuti, from my understanding, from my knowledge, is that he was of the opinion that don't stand up, don't cause an uprising. Why? Because it's going to cause more bloodshed. And he was one of the giants of Syria, one of the senior scholars. The scholars we have now, he's the sheikh of them. He's in his late, very late age he was. And he was one of the ulama who was martyred and, killed during this uprising or this war in Syria, whilst teaching dars of Quran and Hadith, whilst in the Masjid al-Dham. And he was one of those people, ulama, who stayed behind completely and continued to do tabligh of the deen, and he was martyred. So there is a difference of opinion in this topic or the stance that people will take, right? But generally, the bottom line, or what simple way to understand it, is what the author is mentioning here, is that it's not permissible to establish two heads of a state in one period. So you can't make two leaders in a Muslim ummah. If there's a Muslim state, stick with one leader. When you cause two, what happens? There's going to be problems. There's going to be clashes between the two groups. And we do not follow rebellion So we do not allow rebellion to our leaders, even if they are oppressors. So if there's a Muslim state, someone's taken in charge, the author is saying, don't stand up and start fighting and causing bloodshed. Just let it be. Their zulm is not going to be far greater than what you're going to put yourself into, basically. Right? So when you're going to stand up fighting, there's going to be a war, a civil war, and then that's going to be more problems than what the leader is probably doing to you now. Like, for example, in Pakistan, whatever leader is in charge, and they say they put the petrol prices up, people are dying out of starvation. But when you cause a civil unrest in the community, what's going to happen? There's going to be more starvation, more bloodshed, more lives going to be lost. So just do with what you got and try to make amends. Do dua for the leaders. So this is what the author is saying here. But obviously there will be difference of understanding of how to carry out this, in what level of the oppression you should accept, what you shouldn't, and so on.
When you say two leaders, so do you mean like Labour and Conservative, or two kings at the same time?
Two kings. What does it mean, Labour? This is the when you do voting system and all that. This is all a system of the West. In the Sharia, there's like in the Khilafah, one person is appointed to be a leader, and you just follow as he says. And so that's what keeps the unity in the Ummah. Right? But when you do these elections and this voting, this is against the Islamic understanding, Islamic principle. Right? Because normally, even if you just look at it logically as well, why do people, when you vote for something, it's something you want, isn't it? So now you're following your desires. It's not going to be based on Quran and Sunnah most of the time. It's going to be based on how can I benefit. So one person thinks my business or I can make more money with this guy as the leader, he's going to vote him. He doesn't care about other people losing out, other people being the community, half the country losing out. He's just going to be for my, I can become the leader in my grand, in my village, in my town, and then they'll vote for that basis. Right? People will have their own personal agendas, and that's why they're going to take the votes. But in the Sharia, it will be one leader. Like we had Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq was the first Khalifa. Everyone accepted. What he says, it goes. He appoints someone to be a leader in a certain area, that person is a leader in that certain area. So obviously that person has the responsibility in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Then it says, we deem congregational prayer behind any Muslim, whether righteous or corrupt, to be valid. We also perform the funeral prayer over every Muslim that dies, whether righteous or corrupt. So here he's mentioned that the ulama elaborate on this. It's not as simple as that. So here they mentioned that we read namaz behind anyone, if he's corrupt or he's not. There's a difference of opinion here, there's a difference of understanding here. Not everything in the book will be according to what we actually practice or we understand. So, if a person is an open sinner and namaz behind him, the ulama will know it's makruh to read namaz behind a person who is an open sinner. So imagine a guy who smokes weed, and then when he's sober, not when he's mashed, but when he's sober, he's the imam of the masjid. Now he publicly smokes drugs. Now be reading namaz behind him, it's not allowed. If you've done it, obviously that's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept. But you knowing that he's an open sinner, you don't read namaz behind him. But if he's smoking drugs at home, no one knows. You're just thinking, oh yeah, I heard his brother told me, I think he does. That doesn't count. Now he's not a fasiq. Fasiq means a person who's an open sinner. Right? For example, any other crime that is a guna and he openly, publicly does it. Like we say, you shouldn't be talking to the opposite gender. Now the guy's going to buy grocery and the lady at the till is saying to him, how are you, how's your baby? And he said, I'll be fine. And people say, oh, astaghfirullah, he's talking to a woman, he can't be an imam of the masjid. It doesn't work like that. Now if he's on Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, chatting to women, and he publicly doing it on public platforms, now he's a fasiq. He's chatting to other women in public, and he's not ashamed of doing so. So then you shouldn't read namaz behind him. So that's the first thing he mentioned. Second thing he mentioned about the funeral prayer. That you can, he says, you also perform the funeral prayer over a person who dies if he's good Muslim or a bad Muslim. Here the ulama just mention a few extra points. Imagine a drug dealer dies. The general hukum for the ummah is you read his janazah. He's still a Muslim, he still read the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. But this, for the shuyukh and the scholars to go on, obviously the imam's going to do his janazah, right? But now if loads of ulama and sheikhs start coming to his janazah for a drug dealer who's publicly known as a drug dealer, now they're in a way promoting that. They're accepting that he was a drug dealer, but we're happy we're coming to his janazah. So the ulama write that the people who are known to be the scholars and sheikhs, they should avoid it. But the public should still read that person's janazah. Right? Why? Because they should not abandon it. But if the ulama do it, then there's kind of saying approval of, this guy's drug dealing is fine, he's coming to read janazah, he's a good person. Now you're approving of his guna. So this rule that's mentioned here it is what stands. So you shouldn't abandon janazah of a person who has been committing sins, because everyone commits sins, everyone is vulnerable. So you should, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it might be committing sins. Like for example, someone selling drugs, and you don't sell drugs, but you're going to have your own guna. You might be doing zina, you might be doing something else. Right? But just because you're not doing the same sin as him, it doesn't mean you're better than him. Everyone has their own, guna in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the bottom line is, you read the janazah of a Muslim. If you're present, don't abandon. No matter what someone is saying about him, he's bad, he's doing this, he's doing that. As a normal Muslim, you should attend the janazah. And they say, we believe that the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one and the same, both in the heavens and on earth. It's the religion of Islam. He Most High has said, indeed the only religion with Allah is al-Islam. So here is another key principle. Like for previous prophets, for example, Isa alayhi salam came, he came with the religion, he came with the scripture, the Injil, and now we say the Christians. But the people who came and followed Isa alayhi salam, they were Muslims, they weren't Christians. Any prophet, he came with Islam. The only religion in the Allah is Islam. Ibrahim alayhi salam came, Dawood alayhi salam came, he said, right? Any, Judaism. Now they came out with these names, Jews, Yahud and Nasara, Jews and Christians. But the Prophet himself, they came with what? Islam. So all the time from Adam alayhi salam to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anyone who followed the Prophet, they followed Islam. It wasn't a different religion, it's the same religion on the heavens and the earth. So there is only one religion in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is Islam. So the true followers of Isa alayhi salam, in modern terms, the people say they were Christians or whatever, but according to us Muslims, they were Muslims. Right? And then Christianity came, or the variation of Christianity we have today, they came afterwards. Then he said it is a perfectly balanced religion, one that is between extremes and both extremes, being between likening Allah to His creation and denial of His divine attributes, between the negation of free will and the assertion of the creates his own action, qadr. So here the author is mentioning one thing. Islam is the middle ground, right? Between the two extremes. One is, like for example, we're forced to do everything. Why did you hit him? I don't know, Allah made me do it, Allah creates everything. Right? So you knock 10 people out, you say Allah made me do it, Allah creates everything, right? And then on the other hand, you say, so one, you're blaming Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything. And you're saying Allah does everything, I'm gonna control. On the other hand, you say everything I do, Allah's given me choice, so everything I do is my own choice. But true understanding of Islam is between the two things. Like if I told Sufyan, stand up, and lifts one foot, he'll be able to lift the one foot, right? If I say lift the other one as well now, what is he going to do? He can't. That's how our life is like. Half the things we have control of, the other half we don't have control of. Right? So this is our understanding. So Islam is the middle ground between the two. And same with when it comes to the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we spoke about this as well, that Islam is between them. If you're too hopeful of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's going to be, it's culturally here in our Pakistani culture, I don't know if you hear it in your culture, but in our Pakistani community or the Asian community, they commit a sin, and when you say to them, this is a sin, why are you doing it? They say, Allah Malik, Allah maaf kar. Allah is Malik, he'll forgive me, don't worry about it. Don't worry, we're talking about Allah. And they make it seem that guna was nothing. Right? That happens in our community. Right? Yeah, so that happens in your community as well. So it shows, right? Islam is not like that. Islam is the middle ground. We have hope of Allah's mercy, that Allah is the most kind, the most merciful. If I do something wrong, He will forgive me. But at the same time, we are aware that I better not do something wrong because I'm going to be responsible as well. So it keeps you in check and balance, because if you're too hopeful, you're going to be chilling all the time. Don't worry about it. Allah forgive me. Don't worry about it. Whatever missions you go on, whatever mischief you get up to, don't worry about it. Allah forgive me. He's the most merciful. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Don't you know that? Right? He's the most Rahman Ar-Rahim. Who are you to tell me I'm going to get Quran? Who are you to tell me I'm going to get sin? Now you're, in a way, insulting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because why? He's the one, the most severe as well. He's the one you should fear as well. Why? The wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you keep it in check and balance. But if you become too fearful, you do something tiny bit wrong, Astaghfirullah, Allah's not going to forgive me. I miss this out. Allah's not going to forgive me, I'm dead, I'm doomed. Now what happens? You're denying Allah's mercy now. So both extremes are not allowed. The middle ground is the best. That's what the author is mentioning here. Inshallah, for this part we'll leave it here, inshallah. So keep that in mind. So first thing that he mentioned, briefly just summing up, is that in a Muslim state there should be one leader. There should be the Khilafah, and there should be one leader of the Muslim Ummah. And then followed by that, he mentioned that you shouldn't do an uprising. Why? Because it causes more mischief, causing more bloodshed. But obviously, in given circumstances, the ulama of that time, the ulama of this region, they will tell you what to do. No one should take it upon themselves to make their own moves. Like when something happens and we should do this, you should consult the ulama how we should do this. Is this right for us to do this? If we do an uprising, for example, in Leicester, recently had the Hindus, the youngsters of the youth of the Hindus attacking Muslims. Now, we should take advice from ulama that should we go there and fight those Hindus in Leicester or not? Or should we go there and do peaceful protests? Should we even go there in the first place? Let the community manage it themselves. Because loads of other things that can come in place. Some people might say, but we need to go back to Muslims. But you're going to go back them, right? The ulama think more deeper and more into it. We will go to Leicester, we back them on Monday. Tuesday we are in a home sitting in luxury in our area here, enjoying our takeaways, and then those brothers, the shop windows again smashed in. Why? Because after crime that we might have beat someone up when they were there. We might have hurt someone, put someone's life in danger, and they coming back and they grab the first Muslims, our Muslim sisters who are vulnerable, who could be attacked because of our crime that we've done, or our lack of wisdom that we used. So you should always, just because it might seem like the best solution, but you should always consult the ulama how we should go about these affairs. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tawfiq to understand that, inshallah. Moving on to, inshallah, the fiqh part on page 58. No, 59, sorry. So on 59 at the bottom, same book. So far we've covered wudu, ghusl, tayammum, and hayd and nifas, bleeding for women, postnatal bleeding, a period. Now they're mentioning the types of filth. So what is considered impurity? Sometimes, for example, we've gone to play football and we got mud all over our knees. People say, oh, I can't read namaz, my clothes are dirty. Right? Or we've done something, we spilled food on our clothes, I can't read namaz, my clothes are dirty. What is considered impurity in Islam? And if the impurity does go on your clothes, how do you purify those clothes? So this is what the book will be discussing from now, inshallah. So he says, filth, najasa is of two types. So there's two types of impurities, heavy and light. So some things are heavy impurity, some things are called, considered as light impurity. So they mentioned here that the reason why they're giving this distinction about light and heavy, it's about when you read namaz, light is a certain amount is allowed and namaz will still happen. Heavy is different quantity, right? So they'll tell you the two different quantities. So if you have, for example, so you have light filth on your clothes, and you might have a few drops. Can your namaz happen with those? Can your salah happen? You're still wearing those clothes. On the other hand, you have urine which is heavy. If urine goes 1-2 drops on your clothes, can you read namaz and pray with those clothes on? So that's what it's going to discuss here. So he says types of heavy filth. Types of heavy filth. The first one is spilt blood. So there's two types. Now what is considered spilt blood? Any blood that exits the body and it is flowing. First, that's on our neck. For example, I had a nosebleed. The blood is flowing. If that goes on my clothes, that is considered major filth. You can't read namaz with those clothes on. You can't pray in the Hanafi fiqh, your salah, unless you wash those clothes. So a nosebleed will render your clothes to be a major impurity. You could say major and strictly major impurity or minor impurity in that sense. Right? But if I had a cut, but the blood wasn't moving, and it was just on there and I dabbed it onto my clothes, that blood that's on my clothes, that it's not impure. Because it was not moving. Only flowing blood breaks wudu, hence flowing blood is only impure. If it's not moving from the wound or the cut, it's not considered impure. Right? So it has to be moving, that's the first thing. Second thing, feces, any impurity that leaves the body, normally when you go to the toilet, obviously, anything that exits the body, that is considered impure as well. So if that goes on your clothes or body, then those clothes and that body is considered impure. So in the footnotes it mentions about the blood. It says that is from all animals, including human beings, if it's flowing. So imagine you had an animal that had blood in it. You sacrifice a chicken, if anyone's ever done that before, right? Qurbani, you did sacrifice the animal. For Eid or Adha, and obviously that blood can be flowing, isn't it? That blood is considered impure. That goes on your clothes, then obviously you renders your salah. But if you've sacrificed a chicken, those who work in a takeaway, I know one person does. Right? Sometimes it's good to know that's how you apply the fiqh. So sometimes, like I mentioned, blood is impure, right? So sometimes you have buy chicken and chips, and inside when you eat the chicken, there is some blood inside, right? That blood is not considered impure. That blood is still, you're not allowed to eat it. That's a different rule. Eating blood is haram, generally. Right? But the blood being pure and impure is two different things. So if you've done zabah of an animal, and the blood, you let it flow out, and then afterwards you've cooked it, or sometimes, out of meat as well, it looks like blood's coming out of the meat, that is not considered impure as in terms of najasat, right? So that won't make your food haram or and so on. That is still valid, but obviously you wouldn't be eating, you remove the blood, obviously if it's clearly in front of your face, you remove the blood, and then you can still eat that meat. Okay, so the chicken won't be considered impure in that sense. So it mentions here, in the footnotes, that's what it basically touches on. And he mentions here just a clear distinction. This is only if the animal is slaughtered according to the Sharia. If it's not slaughtered according to the Sharia, then the animal is not considered pure. The blood is not considered, even because why? It's not slaughtered according to the Sharia. The third one he mentioned, which is considered a major impurity, is khamr, wine. So this also is impurity. This also includes all intoxicating drinks. So all, Smyrna, Jack Daniels, whatever, Carlsberg, whatever these drinks are familiar on the market.
If it's blood from it's not killed like our way, then the little will be considered heavy.
Yeah. So, all types of, one is like pure alcohol, one is, what we can see on the market, it's advertised all over the TVs and all that. Any of that alcohol goes on you, even if it's mixed with a drink, someone's mixed it with some Coke, but once the alcohol gone in there, it's considered all impure.
Is that even for like hand sanitizer and stuff as well? No.
So hand sanitizers do have alcohol. There's a slight difference. That's what the author in the brackets about khamr, right? Yeah. So there's a slight difference between the chemical alcohol and the drinking alcohol. If you drank the chemical one, you'll be dead basically, right? So there's a difference between the one used in the medical field. It won't be considered impure najasa in that sense. That's why the ulama given the fatwa that it's permissible to use hand sanitizers. It's also the one saying in those like sprays. Yeah? If you put that spray on your clothes, it's still permissible, the ulama have wrote. So like normal fragrance that you buy, it has alcohol in there. And it's normally a very less amount anyway in the fragrances. But in the hand sanitizers, there's a large amount. But that is not considered impure. It's not the khamr that is normally drunk.
So you can use hand sanitizer before namaz.
Yeah. So you can use the hand sanitizer before the namaz. It won't be that your hands are impure now. It's permissible. Hence we've gone on the exit points due to COVID, which alhamdulillah is finished. But you can still utilize them, inshallah. And the next we mentioned the discharge after having a wet dream or marital relation, anything that exits the body, that is also considered impure as well. So if that goes on your clothes, then obviously you need to clean your clothes, clean your body. You need to do ghusl anyway, but that piece of clothing will be considered impure. So you can't have a shower and put those clothes back on. You need to wash those clothes, and then so these are the main things that are considered as major impurities, right? So briefly saying, blood that is flowing, anything impurity that exits the body, and wine, khamr, sharab, alcohol that goes on your clothes, and then any fluids that exit your body due to arousal of their body. Another thing that's just as a side note is other things are considered like pus. Those things that exit the body, they consider impure as well. So you should avoid getting them on your clothes. Also, so I'll go through this. If it doesn't mention it, I'll bring that point up. So now the mentioned things which are considered light filth include the following: urine of animals whose meat is permissible to eat. So any animal in which the meat is such as a deer, sheep, goats, and cows, and these are considered light. It's still impure, but it's light. Why? Because you might be in more contact with these animals. So the ulama, the Sharia is lenient in that aspect. Like for example, a haram animal, most people won't be in contact with the haram animal. But with the halal animal, you will be like, for example, someone who has, animals like a sheep, or they sell them, or they herd them, and they, or cows for milk, for example. So obviously because they're halal, you might slaughter them and sell them in the market. So you have more contact, so the more chance that the cow or the animal might start urinating next to you whilst you're working, and you might get some splashes on your clothes. So there's slight leniency in terms of the fiqh ruling for that. But whereas haram animals, you should, most likely you won't be in that close proximity to them or be around them as often. And so obviously this doesn't apply to everyone. There's obviously Muslims, not everyone works with animals, so but there will obviously be people, a lot of Muslims work with animals, hence we get the halal food or the halal meat. So there obviously has to be in their thousands Muslims who are working with these animals and slaughtering them. So the urine of halal animals will be considered light filth. Urine of horses, similarly, they use for riding, they use for war and different things. They were the car of the human beings until previously, if you had a horse, you were an average person. If you had a car, you were rich. Now it's the other way around. If you have a car, you're poor, and if you have a horse, you're rich. It's very expensive to own a horse, right? So, but going back, it was a normal thing that everyone had a horse, or most people had horses, so they would use them for traveling. Hence, there's a slight different ruling for horses. Droppings of birds whose meat is not permissible to eat. And in the footnote it mentions that is predatory birds such as eagles, falcons, hawks. Droppings of non-predatory birds that do not fly such as chickens, ducks, geese are heavy filth. So the ones that fly, they considered, and even if they're predatory, light filth. Why? Because there's more chance that you might be walking down the street and they might, bless your clothes or something, right? But those birds that which don't fly, like I mentioned, the ducks or the chicken, then their filth or their droppings are considered as heavy filth. Why? Because there's less chance you're going to get them on your clothes. So, and obviously there's loads of other wisdoms behind this as well, but we just go with the simple answer and apply it, inshallah. Now they mention another point here. There's some there's two types of filth. One type of filth which can be seen afterwards. Some can't be seen. Like for example, someone urine. The urine was on the clothes, but you can't see any signs of it. Right? And sometimes, like a dropping of an animal, it goes on the clothes, you can clearly see this poo on the clothes, for example, right? So, some types of filth can be visibly seen, some can't be visibly seen. If it has a physical body, that filth, right? Then it says here, if the place that has filth on it which can be seen or has a physical presence on it, it is purified by removing of that filth off the body, even if it's washed only once. Except for that which is difficult to remove. So now a bird has, or there's poo on someone's clothes, and he can physically see that on his clothes. As long as it's cleanly off and there's no signs of that poo left, right? There might be a smell, but that is, as long as the physical, filth has been removed, it's considered you purified those clothes. But if there is, and then he mentioned, if there's a place or a filth that goes on a clothes that can't be seen, right? Then you wash that clothes 3 times and you mature it, you wring it, squeeze the water out. So for example, if there's urine on someone's clothes, you can't see it. You'll wash it, you'll wring it, squeeze all the water out, then wash it again, then wring it until the water comes out, and so you do this 3 times, then it's considered pure. But if you can't see the filth, then you just wash it until the filth is gone, right? And if it's a solid surface, the surface, like for example, like a car, you know, it's like the metal. So if a urine goes out, you just wash it until the surface is clean again. You don't need to wring it and, you know, nichori or anything, because you can't obey. But as long as you shine like a sword, for example, just wiping it, as long as you wipe it and there's no blood on it, for example, a sword in war, you have blood on the sword, because it doesn't absorb the filth, it stays on the surface, doesn't it? So then just removing it from the surface is sufficient. But if it's a material that absorbs it, then the ruling of washing and wringing it, like you say now, it's about nichori, so you have to do that. You have to squeeze that out. If it's a surface that can't be, you know, for example, it might be something that you can't wring. Your kameez, for example, if you close, you can wring it and squeeze the water out. But there might be a certain thing, like for example, this chair. You can't really squeeze the water out of the chair if it's got on the seat. So you wash it and then you let the water dry until and let it all drip out, and then it becomes dry. Then you wash it again once all the water stops dripping. Then you let it dry again. Then you wash it again until you do this 3 times, and until that's considered the water, the filth has been removed with that water. Inshallah, we leave it up there for this, inshallah. Next lesson we do that how much of it is excused for namaz and how much is not. So just go over these few things. Which thing is considered as minor filth, which thing is considered as major filth, and how to purify your clothes from it. This is really important to know, because sometimes you might find yourself in a situation. Just imagine you've gone camping, you've gone, you know, sometimes you go to charity walks, to months and all that. People go to these places, right? And imagine you got something impure in your clothes, and that's the only clothes you have. Can you do namaz? And then you gone for charity and then you miss your namaz. That doesn't make sense. So if you've gone, you know, on a camping trip or mountain climbing for charity, and you might get, you know, in those places, you might find urine or food or something on your clothes, right? How would you clean your clothes? Can you pray your salah in those clothes? So it's important to know the application of these things as well.
You know, with the 3 times, what if you put in the laundry?
Normally the ulama mentioned that is, you know, in the laundry, I need to double check that masala. But generally the ulama mentioned that you should wash it before you put it in the laundry as well. Because generally in the laundry, it's the same water. I'll double check that for you again. Remind me for next week, inshallah. But if you read the instructions of this eco laundry, washing machine especially, right? The eco ones, they use very, very less water. And it's the same water that's been just keeps spilling the clothes, and then it doesn't really. So especially, you know, I know in Pakistan, the ones that they have those is like open from the top, and they put the clothes in the same water they stay in. So instead of the impurity being in one part, now it's all over the whole clothes, right? So in those ones, all the clothes, even though you might take care, it might look white now, it might look clean. But now because the whole water is impure, it stayed just spinning in the same water again and again, put some soap on it until the filth came off the clothes but it's gone into the water. And now they just wear those same clothes, they hang it up, and then, so you have to be careful of the washing machine as well. So the best advice is, you can check your own washing machine, what's the specs on it, what's the procedure, how it washes it. Every machine is different, right? But generally, my best, the ulama advice is, wash it before you put it in. So if there's some blood on your clothes, just rinse in the sink, you know, give you a few washes, and then put your clothes in. If a child has urinated in the clothes, wash the trousers in the sink first, clean them out, and then put them in the washing machine. It saves all the clothes getting impure.
You know, in our work, actually, the clothes come washed already. And most likely, all the time, these clothes have blood. And we don't know how they washed them. And I do pray actually with this clothes.
So then you'll take the best opinion to your understanding. There's nothing on the. Because I know you make your hands medical field, but generally your position would be, because those clothes have to go through a certain process. You can't just wear any clothes in there because of health and safety. People's life is at risk, carrying germs. You know, you're dealing with wounds and stuff like that. So because the job requirement, because if you're wearing your own clothes and they might have germs or bacteria, you could cause someone's life put someone's life in danger, right? So you'll take what you're given, but obviously if you can see the physical filth on there, you can't pray in them. But at the same time, if you're giving them and they look clean to you, you can pray in them. But at the same time, now it depends on scenario based. You're in the middle of your operation, salah times happen, you can't remove those clothes, you can't leave that room, for example. Certain scenarios you might find this after you can't medically leave that room, you can't abandon your namaz, so you're excused for a certain amount because of your circumstances. Like for example, you're in jihad and now you've got a wound, you've got blood on your clothes. You're not going to say, let me go to ghusl, let me clean my clothes and then I'll start reading my namaz and then come back to jihad. You won't do that, right? You carry on because of your circumstances. So when you're operating on someone, most likely, you know, it's serious, the person's life is at risk, so it's a form of jihad in that sense. But obviously, you'll have to be applying realistically as well. You can't just say, you know, I can go put something else on, but I can't be bothered. Then that's your responsibility. But if there is no other way, and you're going to miss your namaz, you read your namaz. And then, ihtiyat, just in case, you can repeat it afterwards, because you prayed it with clothes that were impure at that time. So that would be the best way to go about it. Moving on to Imam Ghazali's work. This should be on page number 36. Is that it?
Yeah.
Inshallah, we'll do a few minutes on this and then inshallah we call it a day. It says, Adab al-Ghusli min al-Janabati. Similar topic is talking about anyway. But it's talking about ghusl. Those who missed the ghusl chapter, how to do ghusl, it's going to briefly mention here. But this is the Shafi way. This is Imam Shafi's. Because Imam Ghazali wasn't a Hanafi. Even though he was a Sunni Imam, he didn't follow the Hanafi fiqh. So some of his fiqh rulings will be different, I'll point them out. But this was because obviously he wasn't a Hanafi. So he says here, if you have entered a state of ritual impurity by having a wet dream or a marital relationship, which means intercourse, then carry the basin of water to the wash place. Before washing anything, wash your hands 3 times. Then remove the impurities from your body. So first thing he mentions here is that before you even do ghusl, before you even, you know, go to the, first you prepare your tools to do the ghusl, right? So your first tool is what? Obviously you're going to use your hands to clean yourself, aren't you? So first thing, your hands need to be clean in the first place. So you wash your hands, you clean your hands, then you start touching the other things, the bucket that you're going to use, then you fill up the water that you're actually going to use for your ghusl. So if you haven't washed your hands and then you start using the same hand, you put the hand inside the water bucket. If you're using a water, obviously some people have showers now, but other people, you know, that's not the case in most scenarios. That you won't always have a shower. You might be on a holiday, you might not have a shower. Your shower could be broken, you're using a balti at home. Some people still haven't upgraded, or you know, some families just generally don't prefer to use a shower because the elderly like to use a bucket with water. Some people use it for fiqh reasons why they don't want to waste the water. So now they know how much water they have. If you keep the shower running, you're wasting excess water. And even when you don't, when you need to use the water, you know, you put soap on your hair, for example, the shower is still running, you're wasting water. So there's loads of different reasons why someone might not have a shower at home. It doesn't mean that they're broke, it doesn't mean that they're not advanced, but it's just personal preference. But here Imam Ghazali mentions here that you prepare yourself well before you even perform ghusl. Saying, like you mentioned about istinja, before you even use the toilet, prepare your things first, get your water ready, get your tissue, whatever you're going to use to clean yourself, get all those things ready, then you perform the action that you need to do, and then you can easily purify yourself. It said, perform the regular ablution for the prayer as described above with all the supplication and prayers, postponing only the washing of the feet as to not waste water. So now Imam Ghazali mentioned an extra point about, when we've done about fiqh. First, if you need to have a shower, this is the sunnah way, the best way to have a shower is. So imagine someone who said became farz on him. We also know how that becomes farz. There's a simple way, marital relationships, bedroom. So when ghusl becomes farz on you, this is the actual procedure that you should actually take. First, you go and use the toilet. Anything that is in the passageway will come out when you urinate and when you use the toilet. Then you perform istinja, then you do your wudu, and then you have a shower. So this should be the proper way. Use the toilet, do istinja, do wudu, missing at your feet, that's what you mentioned here, missing at your feet. And then you do your ghusl, you jump in the shower, you have your shower, and then that's the proper way you should actually do your ghusl. So he said, now pour water over the right side of your body 3 times, making the intention of listing. In the Hanafi school that we've done in the fiqh, intention is not important, necessary, it's not fard. It's important, but it's not fard. So imagine, you want to read namaz, and you went on the beach, chilling with your boys, hopefully your aura's covered, and then you're chilling, you jumped out, it's namaz time, you can read namaz. As long as your face got wet in the water, your arms, you caught off your head and your feet. If that happened in the water, your wudu is automatically done. This is the Hanafi stance. The intention is not fard. But the opinion Imam Ghazali takes is that intention is fard. So without intention, your wudu won't happen. So even if you had a full shower, you washed all your body, mouth, nose, everything. If you didn't make the niyat, intention, you're still impure. So that's the position he takes. But the Hanafi stance is that if the parts get washed, your wudu is done. If you jumped in, you were out on the beach, and ghusl became fard on you, I don't know how, but imagine, right? Then you rinse your mouth and nose in the sea, for example, and you just swim inside the water. Obviously, the whole water is going to go on your whole body. Your ghusl will be done according to the Hanafi stance. Here, Imam Ghazali is emphasizing one thing: intention. Why? Niyatul mu'mini khayrun min amali. Right? Then, Niyyah is also mentions that Niyyah is what? Greater than your actions. Are you emphasizing that Niyyat is very important? Whenever you do any action, that you always have an intention. You get the extra reward for making the intention. Even if, like for example, I made an intention, for example, that I'm going to, buy someone something as a kind gesture. And then I didn't get the opportunity, or maybe I never saw that person again. I'll still get the reward for making the intention that I was going to treat someone. Right? So just making the intention, you get reward as well. So that's what Imam Ghazali is emphasizing here, that make your intention as well. Then you pour the water over your body like we done the Sunnah method. It's in the other book. The Sunnah method of doing ghusl, you pour the water over your body, right side 3 times, left side 3 times. But you rub your body each time. It's not that you get the bucket, you throw it over your body. You just pour it over your body like this. People do like they get a jug and they just 80% of the water most likely just goes straight on the floor. When they say you pour the water over your body, that rubbing the sunnah. So you're pouring with one hand, not that you spill the whole thing. You're pouring and you're rubbing the water actually onto your body. So that one jug should cover the whole body. Right? So you've covered as much, anything that's missed, the second jug. So by the time you do 3 times this side, 3 times this side, your whole body should be washed. Your ghusl basically should be done. So, but the way we do it these days, people just get 1 bucket, 1 over, 2 over, half your body still stays dry. So that is not, this is not what it means when you pour the water over your body. You apply the other sunnahs as well of rubbing and making sure the body, the water reaches all parts of your body. And he mentioned that as well. He said, make sure the water gets to all the folds of your body as well as the roots of your hair, both thin and thick. Avoid. Next part is about, obviously, according to Imam Shafi's opinion, that if you touch your private part, your wuzu breaks. This is not the Hanafi stance. So he says here, avoid touching your private parts or your front male organ after the wudu. If your hand touches it, if your hand touches your private part, your wudu breaks. This is the stance of Imam Ghazali, right? This is not the Hanafi stance, Imam Abu Hanifa, but it's something really, really important to keep in mind. That if the other Imams hold this opinion, there must be some proof of this, right? So avoid touching your private parts after you've done your wudu. Even though it won't break your wudu according to us, you just wash your hands, because obviously you might touch the Quran afterwards, you might pray, so at least you feel it, you might shake someone's hand. So even if you did touch your private parts after you had a shower and your wudu, then the wudu won't break, but it's better to still wash your hands at minimum, at least according to the Hanafis. But according to the Imam Shafi, your wudu will break, so you need to do wudu again. As a side note, the ulama mentioned that, even looking at your, one thing is looking at women, for example, if because your memory, you get sins. The ulama write that when you look at the ways to increase your memory, the ulama wrote books on this, how to increase your memory, how to memorize more Quran and more hadith and more. Avoid even looking at your own private parts. Yeah, this is one of the ways that it kills your spirituality as well. Even looking at your own privates, it kills spirituality as well. It kills, the ability to memorize. Never mind looking at someone else's, or even, this refers to private parts from the navel to the knees. But for your own self, it refers to just the immediate private part. So here it's important that when you do ghusl, after ghusl, pointlessly you shouldn't be touching your private parts. Pointlessly you shouldn't be looking at your private parts as well. And why? Because it can open the door to other guna. It can open the door to other sins that people do when they touch their private parts. I don't need to elaborate on this. It's clear cut that, and it's a common practice that happens, unfortunately, when people do haram and make ghusl fard on themselves by touching themselves, male or female, both is haram to touch your private parts in any way to please yourself is haram to do that. So even if you did do that, that would be a third way of making ghusl fard on you. So it's not only about marital relationships or having a wet dream, even arousal of yourself will make ghusl fard as well.
Let's say if you need to shave, most likely you have to look where your blade is going.
Yeah, so that's out of a necessity. So if you're cleaning your private parts, we're ordered in the Sharia to shave or remove the hair from, our underarms, our private parts. Obviously that will be done by looking. Health and safety is important, but that should be the bare minimum, right? You shouldn't, do more than your necessity. So obviously some things are necessities that you need to look to a certain extent, but for more of it's not like you're going to get sins for looking at your private part. It's more of a spiritual illness, that you lose your spirituality, you lose that, that nur from inside you that makes you more God conscious. Because if you have a habit of looking at yourself, then you might adopt a habit of looking at other people as well. So if you have taqwa and avoid looking at yourself even, then you feel even more ashamed looking at someone else. There's spiritual benefits to this as well. That's why, even we finish at this, that's why ulama mentioned that, it's better to have a shower but covering your aura. For example, modern day would be like wearing 3 quarters and having a shower. You can still clean yourself underneath, but your private parts are still covered, so you shouldn't fully expose yourself. So the best method would be to keep yourself covered even when you're having ghusl. Right? So this is the best etiquette of performing ghusl, and not, do what's a common trend in the West that is practiced, and we're taught or made to believe these things are norm, right? But these are not the norms in the Muslim understanding of things. Haya is the most precious thing that we have. When our iman is attacked, it's difficult for them to say, don't read namaz, because we're going to reject it straight away. It's hard for them to, tell us to don't believe in Allah. We're going to reject it straight away. But how would they take our iman away? Is by first removing our haya, removing our modesty. The sharm that we have, like in Patwari or our language, they say bagati, right? When you become beghera. Ghera is something you honor, your self-respect. When you start losing that in Urdu, you become beghairat basically. Right? You lose your self-respect, and that's what leads to a person, openly doing guna. If you have self-respect, what will happen? Even if you smoke, you won't smoke from your mom and dad. Right? People do that. The elder generation, I know, like even my relatives who I know that smoke, they don't smoke at home. Why? Because it's disrespectful from my mom to smoke. It's disrespectful from. That's a sign of iman. When, like for example, people listen to music, and they go by the masjid and they put the music down when they drive past the mosque. People find that funny, right? And they be like, look at this joke. He listens to music. He doesn't know it's guna, it's a sin. He goes by the mosque, he puts it down, and they drives a bit forward, puts the music back up. Those people who did that is a sign that they have iman. It's a sign that they still have respect and honor for the deen. They know that they're wrong, but when it comes to the house of Allah, respecting, they still have that adab. But now people say, bro, I'm listening to you anyway, what's the point putting it down for 10 seconds? Now they've lost that sharm and the haya. This is what the West is trying to do. And when we lose our sharm and haya and modesty, then consider that's when we're going to abandon our salah, we're going to abandon our rights of our parents, we're going to abandon our fard and responsibilities. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us all the tawfiq to truly adopt haya and modesty within our lives.
What's the ruling on following different imams in different circumstances?
Now that you've asked about mental hygiene, generally, even though we follow Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, it's not farz for us to follow him only. If tomorrow you wake up and you say, I want to follow Imam Shafi, that's it. On the Shafi tomorrow, Bismillah by all means. I Islamically or any Shaykh or Imam can't say to you, don't do that. In certain circumstances, we can't say don't do that. Like if you said it to me in Luton, for example, I live in Luton, you say I'm a Shafi, I advise you not to be a Shafi, for example. Because when you get stuck on issues of talaq, issues of inheritance, whatever fiqh issues of purity, this and that, I'm not qualified for. Most of the shuyukh or the ulama in Luton will be what? Hanafis. And they are Hanafis, right? So you might not have the source or the correct way or correct people to go to get the guidance. Hence, now you put yourself in a burden in an awkward situation that you can't get the rulings. Especially Shafis you might find in the UK, but Malikis you hardly find any Malikis in the UK. There are some Maliki scholars in the UK, but now you're not gonna. If you need to know about namaz, you're not gonna go to Liverpool or Manchester to just find out about a certain ruling. So, when a person, commonly, people bring this question up, and when they're against following one of the four imams, they say, okay, if you need to follow one of the four imams, I was born in a Hanafi family, I became a Hanafi. Next guy is born in Morocco, they're generally Malikis or Shafis, they become Shafi. Someone's born in Syria, they're normally Shafis, they become Shafi. If born in Turkey, they're Hanafis. But what about these guys who become blue Muslims, what do they be? Right? That's a good question, isn't it? So now, Steve down the road, he became a Muslim. How is he going to become a Shafi, Hanafi? How does he pick? The ulama say he picks according to the knowledge is easy for him to access. So in Luton, for example, generally majority of the ulama, from my knowledge, of 90%, 95% are Hanafis. So if he becomes a Muslim, then if fiqh ruling how to, obviously he won't be able to go to the Quran and take rulings, and even we're not qualified on that level. So what would he do? He'd adopt the Hanafi school. But if for example in Manchester it might be a community where the Imams are more Shafis. So if he becomes a Muslim, he'll be advised, you adopt the Shafi school, you live here in the Shafi community. So you become a Shafi, you follow the Shafi teachings. It'll be easy for you to access the information, right? But if you want to swap, then you can, but make sure you got your ammunition ready, because you don't want to be, like he mentions here, for example, that if you touch your private parts, your wudu breaks. Like you're used to the Hanafi understanding, it doesn't. Now you become a Shafi, like someone said to me, right? I'm a Shafi, and this ruling and that ruling, and I said, okay, fair play, you become a Shafi, Bismillah, by all means. Do you know the Shafi, if you touch a woman, your wudu breaks, right? So that means you touch your daughter, when you kiss your daughter out of love, she's a female, wudu breaks, because that's what he says. And he's like, no, I don't do that part, right? I don't apply that. So you're not a Shafi. Why? Because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So stick to what's easy for you, but by all means, it's allowed, it's permissible, but following one of the four Imams, because the research has been done, the ulama, right, is wajib to follow one of the four Imams. So you don't get stuck, so you don't make a mistake, so you don't apply the Quran and the Sunnah in the wrong way. So it's necessary for us, a layman, to follow one of the four schools of thought. That's what the ulama advise, and so that's the best way. That's how it's been for centuries now. So the best way to stick to that. But it's not false to be a Hanafi, but if you have access, by all means you can change. But obviously, most likely you're not now, because you won't find anyone to go to, right? But inshallah, we'll leave it as there. Answer your question later. آمين. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. وصلى الله تعالى على حبيبه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.